The afternoon heat settled over the city like a heavy blanket, making the air shimmer above the busy roadside. Cars crawled through traffic while impatient drivers leaned on their horns. On the corner of an old service lane stood a tiny repair shop with a faded blue sign and a rusted tin roof. It wasn't the kind of place wealthy people noticed, yet almost every local driver knew that if an engine refused to cooperate, this was where they should come. The shop belonged to 28-year-old Adam, a street mechanic whose hands carried years of honest work. His clothes were stained with grease, his toolbox was older than some of his customers, and his equipment looked outdated. But anyone who watched him closely could see the confidence in the way he listened to an engine. He believed every machine had a story to tell if someone was patient enough to hear it. Adam had never attended an expensive engineering school. Everything he knew came from repairing broken motorcycles as a teenager, reading worn-out manuals at night, and learning through countless mistakes. Every difficult repair became another lesson, and over time his reputation quietly spread across the neighborhood. That morning started like any other. He unlocked the workshop before sunrise, swept away yesterday's dust, and arranged his tools in their familiar places. An elderly taxi driver thanked him for fixing a persistent engine problem the previous evening, while another customer promised to recommend him to friends. Adam simply smiled. He never chased recognition. Solving problems gave him enough satisfaction. Just before noon, an unusual sound echoed through the street. Heads turned as a convoy of luxury vehicles rolled toward the workshop. At the center was a gleaming Ferrari that looked completely out of place among the modest garages and repair stalls. Curious pedestrians slowed down, wondering why such an expensive car had stopped in front of the smallest mechanic's shop in the area. Adam wiped his hands with a clean cloth and stepped forward calmly. He had no idea that the next few minutes would test not only his skills, but also his dignity, setting in motion a chain of events that neither he nor the people watching from the roadside would ever forget. Here's an expanded, natural-sounding Part 2, about 320 words. Continuing from Part 1 without a heading, the bright red Ferrari came to a sudden stop just a few meters from Adam's workshop. A warning light flashed on the dashboard, and the engine began to idle roughly before falling silent. The driver, Adrian Cole, stepped out with visible frustration. As the CEO of a successful automotive company, he was used to quick solutions and premium service. Seeing a row of small roadside garages only made him more impatient. People nearby immediately recognized the luxury car and gathered at a respectful distance. Some took out their phones, while others simply watched, curious about what had happened. Adam walked over slowly, keeping a polite distance. "Sir, if you don't mind, I can take a quick look." "It may be something simple," he said in a calm voice. Adrian looked him up and down. His eyes paused on Adam's oil-stained shirt, worn boots, and old toolbox. A faint smile appeared on his face, but it wasn't friendly. "You?" Adrian said with a short laugh. "Do you even know what kind of car this is?" Adam nodded. "Yes, sir. I just want to inspect it. I won't touch anything without your permission." The CEO shook his head. "This isn't an old taxi or a delivery van. It's a Ferrari. I'll wait for professionals." A few people in the crowd chuckled, embarrassed for Adam. He ignored the reaction and quietly listened as Adrian tried to restart the engine. The sound lasted only a few seconds before cutting out again. From where he stood, Adam noticed a pattern in the engine's behavior. He didn't pretend to know everything, but years of diagnosing mechanical problems had trained his ears. Respectfully, he said, "It could be a fuel delivery issue or a sensor that's sending incorrect readings. If that's the case, forcing the engine to start repeatedly may make the problem worse." Adrian dismissed the suggestion with a wave of his hand and called for a tow truck instead. As the Ferrari was loaded onto the flatbed, Adam returned to his workshop without another word, choosing silence over pride. Here's an expanded Part 3, around 320 words, written in a natural, believable style and without a heading. The following morning, the Ferrari arrived at an authorized service center, where a team of experienced technicians immediately began a full inspection. They connected advanced diagnostic equipment, checked the electronic systems, and carefully examined the engine. Nothing obvious appeared at first, so the team continued testing every possible cause instead of rushing to replace expensive parts. Several hours later, one of the senior technicians noticed irregular readings from a sensor affecting the engine's fuel delivery. The faulty signal was confusing the engine management system, causing the car to shut itself down as a protective measure. It was a relatively small component, but identifying it required careful observation rather than guesswork. As the repair was completed, Adrian asked what had gone wrong. The technician explained the problem and added, "Whoever first suggested checking this area understood the symptoms very well. Continuing to force the engine to start could have caused unnecessary damage." Adrian froze for a moment. The mechanic's explanation sounded almost identical to what Adam had calmly suggested beside the road the previous day. "So, the roadside mechanic was right?" Adrian asked quietly. The technician nodded. "From what you've described, yes. He recognized the signs without any diagnostic equipment. That's impressive." For the rest of the day, Adrian couldn't stop thinking about the encounter. He remembered laughing at Adam simply because of his appearance and the small workshop where he worked. At the time, he had assumed that real expertise could only be found inside modern service centers with expensive tools. Now he realized how unfair that assumption had been. On his drive home, the smooth sound of the repaired engine reminded him of his mistake. Success and wealth had made him confident, but they had also blinded him to the value of practical experience. For the first time in years, Adrian felt genuinely embarrassed, not because his Ferrari had broken down, but because he had failed to show basic respect to someone who had treated him with nothing but professionalism. Here's an expanded part 4, around 320 words, written in a natural and believable style without a heading. Early the next morning, Adrian drove back to the same neighborhood where his Ferrari had broken down. This time, there was no convoy of luxury cars and no sense of pride. He parked a short distance from the small workshop and walked the rest of the way. Adam was already busy replacing the brake pads on an old family sedan. When he noticed Adrian approaching, he greeted him with the same polite smile as before, showing no sign of resentment. "Good morning, sir. Is everything all right with the car now?" Adam asked. Adrian took a deep breath before replying. "Yes, it is, and I owe you an apology." Adam looked surprised but remained silent. "I judged you without knowing anything about you," Adrian continued. "The technicians at the service center found exactly what you warned me about. They told me your diagnosis was accurate. I laughed at you because of your clothes and your workshop, and I was wrong." For a few moments, neither of them spoke. The sounds of passing traffic and clinking tools filled the quiet street. Finally, Adam smiled gently. "We all make mistakes, sir. What's important is being willing to admit them." Relieved, Adrian thanked him. He had expected anger or bitterness, but instead he found humility and kindness. Before leaving, Adrian handed Adam a business card. "My company is expanding its research and technical training division. We need people who understand machines, not just computers. If you're interested, I'd like you to visit my office next week. No promises, just a conversation." Adam accepted the card respectfully but didn't rush to answer. His small workshop had been built through years of hard work, and he wasn't ready to abandon it without careful thought. As Adrian walked back to his car, he realized the greatest lesson he had learned had nothing to do with luxury vehicles. Real talent isn't measured by expensive tools, impressive titles, or polished appearances. It reveals itself through knowledge, patience, honesty, and the quiet confidence earned through years of dedicated work.